on a holistic approach in e-learning, 6 aspects of predictable success. Sabire is an expert in the field of English language teaching and has conducted extensive research on the use of authoring tools in pre-service teaching training. In this session, Sabire will share her insights on a holistic approach to e-learning, focusing on 6 key aspects that are crucial for predictable success. So please don't miss this opportunity to learn from a seasoned professional and take your learning efforts to the next level. And of course, we expect you to continue the discussion in the chat, show your involvement, engagement, and of course, appreciate the comments of the colleagues who you found very insightful. Do continue this collaboration and extend your networking with iSpring Days. Sabire, I'm very excited to welcome you. Do you think we're ready to start?
Thank you, Chris. I think, yeah, we can start. I'm kind of excited for today.
Perfect.
So I hope everything will be okay.
Absolutely. Break a leg, Sabire.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today called A Holistic Approach in E-Learning for iSpring Days of this year. So I will be just starting with a small background. As like Chris say, I complete my bachelor and master in ELT, focusing on the pre-service English language teachers' attitudes on e-learning, comparison on the authoring tools there. And it's my third experience with iSpring in terms of webinars and interactive sessions. So in this session, we will be talking about the framework of this holistic experience in e-learning. And then we will be talking about some dimensional examples for the using on them in contextual ways. We will be talking about these 6 tips for achievement. And lastly, I will be showing a holistic case study for you to understand the process better. So let me just start with the 8 dimensions in e-learning. So actually, when it comes to e-learning, we can't say that there are a limit for dimensions, but in e-learning, as you know, we have different frameworks. So one of the frameworks that I'm using is 8-dimensional e-learning framework, which includes technical parts, corporate education, culture, partnerships, research, lifelong learning, research again, and then pedagogy. So in that sense, the framework that I'm mentioning is ones created by Badr Khan, which was who is an important researcher in terms of e-learning. And he thought that when it comes to e-learning, we need to consider these 8 areas, which are pedagogy, technology, interface, evaluation, management, resource support, ethics, and institutional aspects. So let's continue with these one by one. So mostly it says pedagogy, but when it comes to higher education and corporate training, we need to consider the andragogy as well. So I named this part as pedagogical and andragogical aspects, which focusing on the teaching and learning aspects of this process. Then we are focusing on the technological part, which also consider about the technology infrastructure in the places that we have conducting our e-learning. It includes the hardware and software as well. And after that, for the interface design, we are talking about the content design and the accessibility issues. You know, accessibility, the trend topic for years. And this is one of the things that we need to consider during our e-learning journey, actually. After that, another aspect is evaluation, which includes the assessment of learners, but not just stay with learners. We need to assess the learning environment and also assess our own content. Also, we have the management part, which includes the maintaining our learning environment to understand the people there, to understand the process and product there. Also, the another part is resource support, in which that we need to provide some online support process to our learners and all other stakeholders of our education process. And we say ethics. Ethics are, again, an essential aspect of our journey. So we need to focus on the social and political influence, cultural diversity, and digital divide while we are trying to create an e-learning product. and institutional aspect, which focusing on the administrative affairs part and learner services again. So after just like mentioning these one by one, actually like these eight dimensions don't just like include their headings. They have all their own subheadings within it. For example, for the institutional part, we have three main parts called administrative affairs, academic affairs, and learner services. So mostly it's called as student services, but like since like the higher education and like corporate training mostly prefer learner term, I prefer saying learner services, complaining all the learnings actually. And for the management part, we have again three subheadings. These are people, process, and product. The other one is managing content and as well as managing the environment. The other part is technology, which was the one of the important dimensions there. And in the technological aspect, we need to consider the infrastructure planning, hardware, and software along with it. And also, as I said, the like framework in itself says the pedagogy, but I say pedagogy and andragogy again. On this part, we need to analyze the content. We are giving something to people, but we need to first start with analyzing it. Also, we need to make some analysis on our audience, understand their needs, their preferences in their e-learning journey. We may have goal analysis as well to understand what's the intent in it. We understand our design approach, instructional design process, instructional strategies, the organization of this process, and blending strategies. So mostly like corporates and other stakeholders are using one of the options like online or face-to-face, but we have some different approaches to go with blending strategies like high flex or hybrid learning. So we need to consider them during our process. And another part is about ethics. And in the ethics, we are saying that we need to understand the social and cultural diversity in our group, in our e-learning materials. Also, while creating something, we need to be aware of the bias and political issues. Because like, especially when we are creating something for global, there are so many like things going on the globe. So we need to understand these bias and political problems if we have any in our sources. The other part is geographical diversity, in which that if we are giving some examples, we shouldn't be just focusing on one side of the world. We need to give different examples from different locations to make some diversity in terms of geography as well. Other part includes learner diversity. So like we need to be intercultural awareness in terms of making our process. And the other part includes digital divide, ethic and ethic as well, and legal issues during this process. Later on, we have our interface design, which focuses on the page and website design, as well as the content design here again in terms of the interface usage, navigation, accessibility, and usability testing again. So for the resource support, we have online support units, online support mechanism, and also we have the resources along with it. And lastly, in the evaluation part, we have the evaluation of the content development, evaluation of the e-learning environment, learning environment, and lastly, we have the assessment of learners. So the framework in itself is just gives some main headings to us, and it says that these headings are supported with subheadings. And from this part, we will be start seeing some examples for it. And during these examples, we will see that these sub-dimensions and dimensions are overlapping during the process because everything is connected to each other. So if we are making some e-learning content, we are focusing on the design part of it. We are focusing on writing the objectives, learning objectives. We are creating some assessment for it. And we are also planning our environment based on it. We are using the technology accordingly. So we will see that everything is actually connected within this process. So from now on, as I said, we will be continue with the examples and we will start with the institutional part. And in the institutional part, I will be start with the administrative affairs. While doing that, we will be focusing on three contexts, which are popular in our today's world. These are K-12, higher education, and corporate. And for each dimension and subdimensions, I will be giving three different examples, but you will see that you can use these examples for other contexts as well. So for example, considering the administrative affairs for K-12, you can implement some digital attendance systems or grading systems. So like it will make the administrative affairs process much more easier for us. On the other hand, you can use this for your higher education process or corporate process as well. So what can we do for K-12 other than this? We can use digital portfolios instead of using just paper-based portfolios. We can create a digital portfolio with archives so that we can make the tracking and showcasing much more easier. The other options for K-12 is making some accessing opportunities for online resources and educational materials. This can be done for students, for teachers, and other staff at our K-12 schools. On the other hand, let's focus on the higher education part. For the higher education part, we can, for like providing some professional development for our faculty and staff, we can use different e-learning platforms. We can use digital badging and micro-credentialing systems, again, for rewarding and like recognizing the achievements of the people in our stakeholders. We can use online research administration tools again, so that we can manage the process of the funding, scholarship, and other details much more easier. And for the corporate part, for the workplace, we can use employee compliance training requirements for tracking and management. We can again use some digital performance evaluation systems for the performance management again. And also we can implement some digital onboarding systems while the employee onboarding process. So from this basic example, starting from this, we can see that either you can use the digital attendance for corporate, either you can just change some parts of the performance evaluation and use it for K-12. It's totally up to your objectives and your goals, actually. So let's continue with the academic affairs under the institutional dimension. So for K-12, we can use some virtual field trips and experiential learning, which is very great for K-12. We can use some social media and blogging platforms for discussion and higher order thinking. Again, we may provide personalized learning plans for students again here. And all these things are applicable for higher education and corporate too. So after that, for the higher education part, we can use online degree and certificate programs, again, for academic affairs. We can get help from the open educational resources so that students can get some education material, educational resources for free. We can provide some online writing centers and tutoring services for the writing and research skills. And these are some examples of the higher education part. Later on, we have our corporate system. So for the corporate system, what can be done for academic affairs actually? We can provide some just-in-time learning opportunities for our employees. We can use gamification for engagement and motivation. We can create some gamified experience for our employees. And also, as we did in the part of K-12, we said that we can integrate social media platforms. In here, we can also incorporate some social learning networks and also the communities of practice so that people in the same corporate, under the same corporate, can share what they know. They share their experience and other details much more easily. And later on, we have our learner services. As I said, it was student services, but I prefer learning services. And for K-12, the first thing that we can offer is virtual college and career counseling services. But during the process, while it's for virtual college for K-12, we will just create another opportunity for corporate under the name of professional development. So these are interchangeable objectives and the things that we can offer during the process. After that, for K-12, the second option that we can is after school enrichment programs and some extracurricular activities, like some club activities, some activities that students do for their hobbies and interests. The other thing, considering the learning process, learning is not just about the the process of cognitive stuff, but we need to foster the well-being and spiritual aspect of our learners as well, so that we can provide some digital health and wellness resources during these process of learning services as well. For the higher education, you see that it was for like virtual college and career counseling for K-12. When it comes to higher education, we will start giving some virtual tutoring services and writing centers due to some academic success-based process. And the second option that we can give is online student support services, such as like the disabled services, counseling. These can be used for like the process of the e-learning again. And the other thing that we can provide is virtual internships that will be helpful for university and college students, and experiential learning again. When it comes to corporate, we can provide some online mentoring and coaching, while we can provide some employee assistance programs as well for mental health and well-being, which is similar to digital health and wellness resources actually. And lastly, for this part, we can provide some team building and professional development opportunities. So during the context, while context change, the audience change, but mostly we are giving similar services to people there. Their like agenda change, their maybe content change, but still we are focusing on their learning. We are focusing on their well-being, give some support. So these are some interchangeable things again, as I mentioned. The other dimension is management, and under the management, we will start with the people, process, and product. For people, process, and product in K-12, we can provide collaborative design and delivery of high-quality e-learning courses. We can add the accessibility guidelines and policies for online learning, especially like in some states, there are specific accessibility guidelines, so we can follow them. We can get use of the support of the online learning modules and resources which are effective and engaging. On the other hand, for the higher education, we can get help of the instructional designers and learning technologists, which are expert in these areas. We can create some faculty training programs and make some quality assurance during the process to make things better for the further processes. And we can get help of the interactive and multimedia rich online courses again. And for the corporate part, we can get help from the e-learning specialists again, and also like the data analysis for the program evaluation. Also, we can create some specific training policies and procedures for our own company or our own corporate actually. And also, we can focus on the personalized and adaptive e-learning experiences as well. Let's continue with the managing content. So in the managing content part, the thing that we can do for K-12 is, again, creating some multimedia interactive content policies and guidelines. So you see we use policies and guidelines a lot, but our content change, our context change. So we are using these terms really well. The other thing is adaptive learning technologies and intelligent tutoring systems for K-12. And also we can use formative assessment tools in which we will see in the further again. For higher education, we can use some content creation and tagging strategies so that the students can make better search and browsing during their process. Other thing is social bookmarking and annotation so that students can annotate some specific parts during their lectures. And also we can get help from the learning object repositories and metadata standards while using the same materials for reuse. And for the corporate part, we are using content marketing strategies which are essential for corporates. We are getting help of the micro-learning and just-in-time learning strategies again. So we are providing some bit-size and relevant content for the people in the corporate. And again, we can get help from the gamification and reward systems while focusing on the participation and completion of our employees. And other aspect of the management dimension is managing environment. So for the environment, we have again some different aspects that we can use. For the K-12, the first thing that we can focus on is focusing on the hardware and software resources to see whether we have enough computers, whether our internet is okay or not, and we can see the tools that we have. Another thing is providing some digital citizenship and online safety curriculum for the environment. We can get help from the learning analytics and data visualization tools. For, for the higher education, we can get help from the technical support services as help desk and like troubleshooting. And we can create some bring your own device policies and guidelines for use of mobile devices for the classes. And we can like focus on the like integration of LMS with other systems like SIS and like library systems that we have, so that we can share data easily during this learning process. And for the corporate part, we can use some infrastructure part like cloud-based servers and VPNs that can be used so that like people from a different branch of the corporate can share the like documents and other materials much more easily. We can use personal devices and public networks for like use of like corporate-based stuff, and we can create policies and guidelines accordingly. And we can integrate our e-learning platform with HR and talent management systems so that the process will be much more smoother. These are the things that we can for managing the like environment, and that's the last part of the management dimension. Then we have our technological aspects, and in the technological aspects, the first thing is infrastructure planning again. So for K-12, we need to focus on the curricular goals and standards, and we need to focus on again like LMS and SIS for data exchange and interoperability and technical support. For a higher education part, we need to focus on the like different e-learning modes like online, hybrid, and blended, as like we mentioned before. We need to focus on again some policies and guidelines for academic policies and regulations. And we need to get help from learning analytics and data privacy policies so that we need to understand whether these are okay with our federal and state laws as well. For the corporate part, since like we are focusing on K-12, in K-12 we have our curricular goals because like we're under the roof of a school. But when it comes to corporate, we are focusing on our business goals. Like we again have some goals and objectives, but the context is changing actually. So the other thing is again HR and talent management systems so that we can integrate them to our e-learning platform. And also
Sabire, I would like to interrupt you for a second if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you. I see that we have so much of very content-rich slides here, so many content-rich slides here, pardon. And it's so interesting to follow your story, but I wonder if maybe we want to ask a couple of questions to our audience. Perhaps we want to ask them if they belong to K-12, higher education, or corporate segments at the moment. Maybe we can hear from them, or is there any other question you would like to ask them in the meantime?
Yeah, actually, like we can start with the question of the context as K-12, higher education, corporate, or others, maybe.
Yeah,
we can
it would be good,
responses.
guys. Yeah, if you don't mind, maybe you can share with us in the chat what segment you belong to exactly. So I see corporate. All right, higher education, corporate, ESL, higher education. All right, just one person from K-12 so far. All right, let's give it just a second. Oh, state government. Nice. Corporate healthcare, corporate. Lots of corporate representatives here, which is quite natural. Great, great. I see that gives us a better understanding of the landscape. All right. Sabire, would you like to ask anything else, maybe? Some of the comments that you would appreciate from the audience?
So like, it's really good to have like different like segments in this presentation. But like maybe like the thing that I want to ask that whether they have any prior information knowledge about this framework before. So like, are there anyone knowing this framework, like 8-dimensional e-learning framework before this presentation?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. That sounds great. Have you guys heard about this eight segment framework before Sabire's presentation? So let's see. Well, I still get lots of replies from our attendees about what segment they belong to. And we have a comment that it's nice the way you have set this up, as it's easy to compare, contrast each segment within the various dimensions. So it's very nice that we have this opportunity to compare those landscapes very nicely. Most people say that no, they haven't heard about this framework before, so this is something quite new to them, but they've learned about the various dimensions. However, this is the first exposure to this particular model. So I can see that our participants have not yet been informed about this model. So I think it's even nicer that we give them this opportunity.
Yeah,
Great.
At very soon of the end, I will have some other questions, so that
Perfect.
the first thing that I want to do is give the basic idea of this model with some examples. But after that, we will see some other examples, and I want to gather ideas as well.
Great. Thank you, Sabire. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that we also have some input from the audience. Thanks.
Thank you. So yeah, for the infrastructure part, again, for the corporate, we have our business goals and objectives. We're again integrating our e-learning platform to the HR and talent management systems, and we are focusing on the organizational needs and challenges. So for K-12, we are focusing on mostly the learner needs, learner challenges. But when it comes to corporate, we have bigger audience, we have bigger aspects. So we are focusing on the organizational needs and challenges. Let's continue with the hardware. So for the hardware, in K-12, we are again, as I said, we are focusing on learning needs and preferences just one or 2 seconds before. So we are focusing while selecting hardware and devices, we are focusing on their needs and preferences. So some students don't like using, for example, iPads. So we need to focus on that. We need to be sure about that. And the other thing is the understanding the classroom technology infrastructure. So for example, for some schools, the internet connection couldn't be very stable due to the region of it. So we need to think about while creating some e-learning content. And we if it's okay, if it's allowed, we need to understand that we can provide some student-owned devices for this learning process. So if it's okay to bring them some iPads, for example, they can bring that in class and we can use it for the classes. For higher education, again, we are while selecting our hardware, we need to focus on their academic needs. So whether they're, for example, there are some statistical tools they need to use, whether their hardwares are okay with it, we need to understand that. And again, for research and again, data intensive process, we need to understand that the storage systems are okay, the performance computing are okay, we need to understand this. And mostly in higher education, we are using mobile devices a lot so that we can provide them again for higher education. And when it comes to corporate, we are also using these hardware devices again considering their needs and their preferences of employees. So mostly in corporate environment, we are using our laptops and we are using our computers, but there are some people who would like to continue with their mobile devices as well. And also we can for corporate, we can use virtual and augmented reality technologies for some simulations, for example, to show some corporate aspects in there. And again, we have also our mobile devices for mobile learning and on-the-job training. So in corporate life, we are trying to give opportunities of learning professional development while also they're on the job. So we need to think about it while designing something, whether it's responsible for mobile or not. And the other part is software. And in the software, we need to understand that whether the technologies that we are using is adaptive or personalized, so that we can give some personalized learning paths to our learners. We need to provide some educational softwares that are okay with our curriculum instruction. And we may include some digital assessment tools and resources as well to give some aspects for formative and summative assessments. In the higher education part, we have our learning management system. So these are much more used in higher education. So whether our learning management system is okay for blended learning, whether it's okay for hybrid learning, we need to understand that. And also we said it before, but when it comes to higher education, we need to provide some academic content, which is low cost or free. So like open education resources are important here, again, as a software maybe. And academic integrity tools. So like we are trying to understand whether everything is okay, academic misconduct, any academic misconduct, any plagiarism. So like we need to implement academic integrity tools for higher education. And let's go with the corporate. Again, learning management systems are mostly used in corporate again. And apart from that, we can provide some social learning platforms and resources so that like people in the same corporate can share their knowledge and experience. They can share their know-how within that. And for the like corporate life, we are like mostly focusing on data. So like we can provide some data analytics and learning analytics tools for them for their like the development and learning parts. So we are continuing with the pedagogy and andragogy part as a, like another dimension here. And we start with the audience analysis. So while doing our audience analysis, we need to understand the learners' needs and preferences. What are their ideas? What are their needs? Also, we need to like try to understand students' engagement and motivation data. We can get these through our LMS. We can use some scales for it, but we need to analyze these data as well. And maybe at the end of the process, maybe during the process, we need to get help from the student assessment data so that we can improve some assessment and we can provide like different resources maybe. And for the higher education, again, we have our learner data for improvements. We can use student feedback and evaluation data again, and we have learning analytics data again. So like mostly in the audience analysis part, we have similar tools that we can use. The data is kind of similar, the things are kind of similar, but their depth can vary according to the process. For the corporate part, we have employee learning needs and preferences, so the audience change a little bit. We can get their engagement and satisfaction data, and we can get their learning analytics data. For the content part, in K-12, we have curriculum standards and learning objectives. We need to analyze them, whether they're okay with our e-learning initiative. We have multimedia and interactive elements again. We need to understand and analyze them to see whether it's okay with our content or not. And again, we can get help from the assessment and feedback for the whether our assessment and feedback is suitable for our content or not. For higher education part, again, we have some kind of curriculums, but in here we have focusing on the syllabi much more, like course syllabus. So like we are using the course syllabi and learning outcomes here. We are focusing on learning activities and assignments. We are getting help from the assessment and feedback mechanisms. And we have job roles for companies like corporates, learning activities and simulations, assessment and feedback here. And the other part, which is really essential, is instructional design and strategies. So for K-12, we can get help from backwards design, game-based learning, and inquiry-based and project-based learning. On the other hand, for higher education, we can get help from learner-centered and competence-based approaches because we have focusing on competencies much more in higher education since we have a certain job goal here. We can get help from the blended and flipped learning. We can get help, peer assessment, and collaborative learning again. For the corporate, we can get use of performance-based and competence-based approaches again, because even in the corporate line, we have similar, we have our own job roles, we have our own responsibilities, so that competencies are essential here. We can get help from the micro-learning and just-in-time training. And again, we can get help from social and collaborative learning in here. Let's continue with the ethical examples here. For K-12, in the ethics and legal issues, we need to train our learners in terms of digital citizenship and online ethic or net, so that they can understand the the world of online actually. We need to focus on the copyright laws and fair use policies, because these are essential. There are some common rules that we need to follow. We need to understand these, and we need to implement some security measures for the data and privacy issues. In the higher education, the thing that we mostly focus on is academic integrity and plagiarism. So like we need to provide some guidelines and resources. Again, we have copyright laws and fair use policies here and security measures again. For the corporate life, we have our professional ethics. So like for the professional ethics, we need to provide guidelines and resources. We have again copyright laws and intellectual property laws, and also we have security measures again. So for all process, we have security measures, but their again depth and dimension may change. Let's continue with diversity and inclusion, which is one of the topics that I really like.
Sabir, before you proceed, I just wanted to inform you that we have about 13 minutes left for the Q&A.
Yes.
So just informing you whenever you need to finish, take your time.
Thank you. So for diversity and inclusion, we have our cultural institutions and community organization, restorative justice practices, and peer mentoring and leadership programs for K-12. For higher education, we have cultural responsive teaching and anti-bias practice, response protocols, and underrepresented student groups. So like we can provide some programs for them. And for corporate, we have diversity, equity, and inclusion assessment, employee resource groups, and inclusive leadership practices. Let's continue with interface design. And in interface design, we have focusing on the visually engaging interfaces for young learners, while we are focusing on user-friendly part for adult learners. So this is the part for pedagogy and andragogy here. And also we are using multimedia elements and accessibility in K-12. For higher education, we are also using interactive elements and responsive interfaces. For corporate, we are focusing on the company's branding. So when we are doing something, we need to consider it. We need to add interactive elements and user-friendly interfaces again. For the navigation, accessibility, and user testing, we have to focus on the easy to navigate for young learners because like they have the basics. We need to provide alternative navigation and user testing as well. In the higher education, again, easy to navigate is essential. We focus on accessibility and user testing here too. And for the corporate, again, easy to navigate. For all ages, we need to focus on these easy to navigate aspects with accessibility and user testing. And resource support. In resource support, we are using virtual support services, online resource libraries, and online professional development for K-12. On the other hand, for higher education, we have virtual support services, online resource libraries, and online training for faculty. And corporate includes virtual support services, online resource libraries again, and online training for employees this time. In the resources part, we have ebooks and digital resources, games, activities, recorded lectures, and videos for K-12. And for higher education, apart from these, we have academic journals and research databases, along with the course materials and lectures, actually. And for the corporate, we have our training materials, again, reference materials, and some interactive learning modules and simulations for corporates. And evaluation is one of the topics that we have. So content, for the evaluation of the content, feedback is essential. We need to get help from learning analytics and the focus on the overall effectiveness, focus on the whole process. For higher education, focus on peer reviews so that peers are essential. Again, learning analytics is essential, and again, focus on the whole process. And corporate includes needs assessments, learning analytics, and feedback from the employees. What about the environment? For the environment, we are focusing on the effectiveness of the environment with the student engagement and participation, considering the accessibility and usability. We have feedback from students and faculty, engagement and participation, and accessibility and usability. And for the corporate, we have employees and managers, employee engagement, and accessibility and usability. And lastly, we have assessment of learners, which includes quizzes and games, exams and projects, feedback, quizzes and discussion boards, exams and research papers for higher education, again, feedback. And for corporate, we have needs assessment, pre and post-training assessment to see the change during the process, and feedback. So this is a process actually for K-12 and higher education and corporate, understanding all this process. What are the tips for achievement then? So the thing that we need to understand that whether we are K-12, higher education, or corporate, we need to provide the necessary resources and support. This is the first thing. Then we need to understand that we need to focus on all of these 8 dimensions during our journey. We need to focus on the pedagogical and andragogical principles according to our audience. We may understand that we need to ensure the ethical considerations while doing this process. Everything is legal or not. This is the case. We need to evaluate everything continuously and make improvements accordingly. And we need to understand, this is the thing that I really want to make sure that learner-centered pedagogy is essential, whether you're in K-12, corporate, or higher education. So every person is unique, and they all have different backgrounds. These are the essential 6 tips for the whole process. Let's continue with a small case study. Then we are done for this presentation and continue with Q&A. So I have a company essay, which is a multinational corporate with like lots of employees worldwide. They are like using this e-learning module, and like they are having different like cases within it. So for institutional part, they have an e-learning department. They have strategic goals aligned with their process. They have management. In the management part, they have their own project management system, monitoring and adjustments. For the technological aspects, we have our e-learning technologies and accessibility. And pedagogy and andragogy, we have blended learning approach, personalized learning paths. For ethics, they are adhering to the ethical standards. Content are free from the bias and discrimination. For the interface design, user-friendly interface and accessibility for employees with disabilities is the key for them. For resource, they have comprehensive support, technical support, access to some resources and materials, and they have space for collaboration and discussion. And for evaluation, they are providing regular evaluation, use different metrics, and they are trying to improve this process based on the result continuously. So let's just kind of finish up this whole process. So like this is like quote that I really like from Da Vinci. He said that to develop a complete mind, study science of art and study art of science. Learn how to see and realize that everything connects to everything else. So like again, at the first I was saying that everything is connected, everything is overlapping, and Da Vinci says that as well. And like this is my like final word. A good learning experience can be achieved from a holistic perspectives that include the whole process and stakeholders, just like the puzzle pieces that makes up a whole. So like each pieces alone wouldn't give the meaning, but when we are just like make the whole, we can see the bigger picture. Yeah, so these are the things that I want to say today, and like I think we have a good time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, I will be okay for you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sabire. Unfortunately, we only have 5 minutes left for questions. So I'd probably say we'll start with the one that popped up earlier. I don't know if you have a slide for this specifically, but Abigail Hinton was asking, do you have a slide that compares or slides that compare all dimensions for corporate on one page?
Unfortunately, like for these slides, because like there are lots of dimensions, I couldn't give them one, but like maybe later on after this like event, I can prepare one and share with you. It's
all
totally
right,
okay.
Thank you. All right, perhaps, or maybe if we contact you on LinkedIn, maybe you could post it there. I think it's actually a great idea from our participants to put all together in one page, and it will be very efficient. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, dear guys, dear participants. If you have any other questions, please post them in the chat. However, I'd like to proceed with one more question, and I'd like to ask you, you've shared with us, Sabire, a lot of those different specificities on the dimensions of the framework, but which one do you find the most challenging to implement effectively, by the way?
Yeah, like I really like this question because like mostly we are easy to find the ones that I like use in regular life, but like the ones that hard is kind of hard to find as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So would you like to proceed to one more question, or would you like to, yeah?
Yeah, I can get another question.
Yes, fantastic. Can you give us, maybe just within the 2 minutes, can you provide us an example of how this framework has been already used in practice for some course or program or something?
So like currently I'm a member of a like higher education institution, and while like using this framework, we are starting from the very basics. So we need to first understand audience, as I said. We start with the audience. We need to understand, make our assessment regularly on them. Then we are continuing with our like content development. We are using the syllabus there. We are using the like the like assessment of the learners based on it. And like while doing that, we need to make everything legal so that it makes the ethical part for us. We need to add the manager part to like feedback process on it. So like actually like when you like think about your e-learning process, you will see that you have these little pieces in there. You don't need to think like I need to get that management part. I don't need to get like I get to this institutional part. No, like this will be happen regularly within your content.
I see. I see. Thank you, Sabire. And I'd like to, first of all, extend my thanks. We also have a couple of last minute questions in the chat from Isaac, but unfortunately, I don't think we'll have time for that since we are very tight on schedule. But I really, really appreciate and extend the thanks from the chat participants, from the attendees, and from myself personally, since I am very passionate about intercultural communication. I'm very grateful you mentioned that in the model, which the intercultural competence is a very, very important factor for e-learning and beyond. All right, Sabire, thank you so very much for being with us today. I hope you'll also be able to stay and listen to some other participants, listen to some other speakers, will you?
Yeah, I will try.
Great.